That's because even when I'm in my office, I don't answer the phone because the majority of calls I get are people trying to sell me things. So I literally just don't answer it. And usually I don't even check messages. I just delete them, even with their fancy new system. You can generally reach me via email from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sometimes if I'm not sleeping well, it's 2 a.m. to 10 p.m. And I usually try to reply within 2 to 4 hours. Very, very seldom that it takes me longer than 6, unless I'm in class, which Tuesdays and Thursdays I'm in class from 8 till 1. So I won't obviously reply then. Office hours are 5 to 6 p.m. Tuesday, probably the one you printed out. I had the wrong day. It's not Monday, it's Tuesday. 7:30 to 8 a.m. Tuesday and Thursday, and 12:45 to 1:45 p.m. Tuesday and Thursday, and by appointment. If none of those 4 stated hours total work for you, let me know, and I will arrange another time on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday to be available. The texts, neither of which I brought, are the ones that some of you have. Big, massive thing, Literature of the Western World. It's not the best text to use, but it's one of the best, and it's got most of what I want in it. If I had my druthers, if I were God, I would be able to create a textbook that would have all of the Divine Comedy and then most of the other stuff, but usually they only give you the Inferno. I have no idea why, because the Inferno's hell. So it's like they want you to go to hell and leave you in despair. Doesn't make any sense. And then, so there's that one, and then the Divine Comedy, the Penguin Classics. It's 1 volume. The one I'm going to be using is the 1 volume edition. I think there is also a Penguin Classics where you can get the individual Inferno, Paradiso, and Purgatorio. Okay. Students with disabilities, you know who you are, you know what you need to do. Do it so that I get the appropriate email and or paperwork. Okay. Disclaimer, syllabus is subject to revision. I went back and forth, I can't tell you how many times, trying to figure out what to include and what to exclude. And I doubt that we'll actually be able to stick to everything that's on here. We might have to drop something in the middle. We're not going to drop anything from Dante. We're going to read all of Dante. Come hell or high water, we are going to read all. Shouldn't say that with Harvey probably getting up here. We're going to read all of Dante. We're going to read all of Homer's Odyssey. It's the stuff in between that we might play around with. Like if we get behind already after Homer, we're not going to talk at all about Homer today, even though I know I told you to bring your books and stuff. If we get behind after Homer, if we end up like being a day or 2 days behind, we'll definitely drop one of the Oresteia plays by Aeschylus, or maybe Euripides, but I don't know. We'll figure out something. Any changes that are made to the syllabus will be made in class. I'll try to post them to D2L, but I can't promise that. So it's your responsibility to keep track of any changes made in class. What else? The last sentence on that disclaimer section is really the most important one there. Check your MTSU email and D2L daily before class. If I have to cancel class for any reason, I'll email you and I'll post it to D2L by 8 a.m. That, if you have an hour-long commute, that way you'll know, hopefully, assuming email and D2L are working, you'll know well enough in advance to not show up. Classroom decorum. Attendance is expected, but you'll see when you read through this, I don't have a quote-unquote attendance policy. Like, you miss 3 and I take a grade off and you miss 4 and you fail the class, which I used to, and I've kind of gone back and forth in semesters. This is a semester where I'm not having an attendance policy. Arrived to class on time. Arriving after class has begun is rude, disrespectful, disruptive. That door actually, if I don't put the garbage can in front of it, it self-locks at 10 minutes after class begins. If I open it within the 15-minute time schedule I have set to open it with my ID, so it should automatically lock at something like 9:50. So if we're talking and you get here at 10 o'clock and the door's closed, I'll probably just do this, which can either mean hello or goodbye, one of the two. So just, try to arrive on class on time. If you know you're going to be late every day, if your other class is in the rec center and you get out at 9:25 there, let me know ahead of time. And that way it won't be a problem. That way also I will probably try to hold off on doing the quizzes for a few minutes. Okay. But if you just have repetitive problem of oversleeping, I'm not going to cut you any slack because I'm not oversleeping, so why should you? What else? If you know you're going to miss class for whatever reason, court date, doctor's appointment, dentist, hospital, whatever, let me know. Odds are I will let you make up that quiz. Okay, that is not a promise. It's odds are. That also means there are some odds against it. Okay, but let me know ahead of time, and I will try to work with you. Okay, even though I know it says no makeup quizzes or exams will be given. Late papers will receive an F. The paper is due somewhere around the 30th of November. So if you come in on December 5th with your paper, I'll say thank you. I'll write F on it, give it back to you. I'll put it in the grade book. I won't even read it. Okay? But you will at least get credit for it. An F in my grade book is a 55. It's not a 0. Zeros have a tendency to kill grades. F's just wound them. Okay? Better to be wounded than dead. What else? For this course to be successful, I'm just going to read this part. For this course to be successful and for each of us to get the most out of it, it will be governed by common standards of decency and courtesy. I'm going to then list some of those. These aren't all inclusive, by the way. There are other standards of decency and such. For example, one should be quiet while another is talking. One should be courteous to others. One should eat or chew gum quietly in class. That doesn't mean you have to eat or chew gum. I revised this a little bit, and I couldn't find a better way to do it. But if you're going to eat or chew gum, do so quietly. It's disconcerting for me as well as for the people around you. If you come in and you got a bag of Doritos or Crunchy Cheetos or something, and the person next to you, the veins are starting to pop out on their neck because you're driving them crazy, I'll ask you to stop or share. Spread the noise around. One should not, it goes without saying, one should not cheat or plagiarize from another's work. One should pay attention to the instructor and to others, and one should personally complete the required assignments. I should have mentioned this in my first class. I completely forgot. What does that mean, one should pay attention? What would be the opposite kind of corollary to that? One should not sleep, like for my 8 o'clock class. I know there's going to be some people. Because I've had a tendency in the past, like I've had students literally fall asleep in the front row, and I've gone up and done that. I mean, when their head's resting down there. I've done that, that kind of wakes them up. Just don't, it's rude. What else? Failure to complete any assignment other than daily quizzes. There are only 2 other assignments, I think. Got 3 classes back. I'll take that back. There are a bunch of exams in this class. I was thinking my other classes. So failure to complete one of the exams, for example. You just decide, I'll just blow it off and take my chances on the others. That's an F for the course. Okay. You decide not to turn in the term paper. That's an F for the course. It's not an F just for the paper. Okay. It's an F for the course. So be forewarned. If you don't abide by these standards, I will ask you to leave. If you repeatedly don't abide by these standards, like you become disruptive, you have a personality change, and you become, the exorcist kind of in class, your head spinning and everything, I'll literally call the police and have them stationed outside the next class period, and they won't let you in. Okay. Cell phones, laptops, that kind of stuff. Use of cell phones for calls, texting, selfies is strictly prohibited. Yes, I actually have to have a selfie policy. Last semester, I had a student in one of my sophomore level courses who, I am not kidding, like literally every day the first 3 weeks of class, she sat back in the corner and she's doing this for the entire hour and a half. She's just taking selfies. Even after I said, Jordan, put it away. Put it away. Next morning, she's, I don't know if she was Facebooking live or Periscope, whatever. Don't. Okay, just don't. If you're a first responder, EMT, fire, police, etc., and you need your phone out, you can have it out, have it on silent, and tell me, let me know. Why? Let's say some student goes all Virginia Tech on us and he's running around shooting. I'm going to say, officer, do your job, kind of a thing. What else? If you have an ongoing family emergency, or if you have a family emergency that arises during the course of the semester, let me know immediately. Somebody gets in a car wreck, somebody gets cancer, somebody, who's close to you is in the hospital, email me. Let me know. I will bend over backwards to make sure that you can successfully complete the course. Successfully, depending on you, of course. It's not I'm going to do the work for you, okay? But I will make all kinds of allowances. I had a student, I think it was last fall, ended up with a family member, I don't remember what it was. Father had a heart attack or got cancer or something, and the student wasn't able to attend class. I said, don't worry about it. We'll work out the quizzes. Just do the work. Stay current with the reading. That student ended up passing the class, I think with at least a C. Okay? So I'll do everything I can. If, however, you show up the last week of class and say, Dr. Sherman, I'm really sorry that I've been gone for the last 8 weeks. Here's why. I'll say, I'm really sorry that's happened to you. You should have told me before. You failed. I can't do anything at that point. You've got to let me know when this begins. Okay? Strongly discourage the use of laptops and tablets for note-taking. This is something new I put in. And it's because, and if you're interested, I can send them to you. It's because of a number of studies that have come out in about the last 4 or 5 years about student retention of material via note-taking by hand versus computers or tablets. And every one of the studies showed that students who take notes by hand retain the material better than if they take it via computer. And the simple reason given in each of these studies is that what you're doing when you're taking notes by a computer is you're simply transcribing. That is, you're like a dictaphone. You're just copying everything you hear. Whereas if you're taking notes by hand, okay, your brain is filtering. It's filtering out what it determines to be the unimportant material. And so you're writing down the important stuff. Okay? This is, of course, assuming you're taking notes at all. I've had plenty of students who come in and say, oh, I've got a really good memory, and they show me that they don't. Because they don't take notes and they don't do well. So I would strongly encourage taking notes. Okay, what else? You can, I don't know that this applies for this class, use your laptop, tablet, phone for reading electronic versions of the course texts. But if I see you on Facebook, on Amazon, on Craigslist, on a dating site, whatever, I'm going to ask you to stop. Okay? Grading. It's real simple. Your final grade is determined by the total number of points you earned by the total number of points possible. That's it. Okay? There will be some opportunities for extra credit, which I'll talk about Thursday, and I will put on D2L. It's going to be at least 3 opportunities. I don't know how much they'll be worth yet. So that. Grading scales there, it's a simple 10-point scale. You've got then the schedule. Notice, expect a reading quiz almost every class period. I'm not saying there will be one every class period, but I would expect one. So what does that mean? Well, we're going to start Homer's Odyssey on Thursday. And I didn't include it, and I should have. But obviously, for anything that you read in the big textbook, read the introduction to that. So read the introduction to Homer, read the introduction to the Odyssey. I would even say read the introduction to the ancient world because it'll help kind of inform your reading. I'll talk a little bit Thursday about ancient Greece, but I'm not going to go into it a whole lot. So if there's going to be a quiz on Thursday, it'll be over books 1 through 6. What will it be over? Major characters, major events, major plot stuff. Okay. The book poem we're reading is titled The Odyssey. Who is it about? Odysseus. Okay. Or Ulysses, as it's also called. It's about his journeys from where to where. Where is he leaving at the beginning of the Odyssey? He's leaving the Trojan War. Okay. Where is he going? He's trying to get back home. He doesn't get back home by book 6. He doesn't get back home until much later. It takes him 10 years to eventually get home. Okay, 10 years of the Trojan War, 10 years for him to get home. So it'll be that kind of thing. And probably what I'll do is, unless you do really well on it, I'll make Thursday's quiz, assuming there is one, kind of a dry run. It'll be a practice. So if you get a 0 out of, 10 or 20 points, it won't count against you. Okay? And more than likely, assuming we do have quite a few quizzes, 15 or so, there'll probably be 1 or 2 lowest quiz grade will be dropped. Okay? So we've got, 4 days for the Odyssey. And then I'll distribute the Homer exam. Obviously, since it's going to be distributed, it's going to be an essay of some kind. Okay? That'll be then due a week later. It won't be an essay like 5 to 10 pages by any means. It'll be fairly short, like 2 to 3 pages. So it'll be fairly specific. You'll have, 3 or 4 topics. Choose one. Something probably write 750 to 1,000 words. Okay? No external sources are needed, just the text that the quiz is over, or the exam's over. Okay? Then we'll jump into Aeschylus and what's called the Oresteia, which is 3 plays about Orestes, kind of. First one Agamemnon, then the Libation Bearers, then the Eumenides, and then we'll have Sophocles, Oedipus the King, and Antigone, or Oedipus Rex as it's also called. The book doesn't include Oedipus at Colonus. If it did, I would have assigned it. That way you would have the full Oedipus trilogy. And then Euripides' Medea. I took off the one comedy that I had included simply because I ran out of space. And we might have to, again, we still might have to drop something. If we do, I don't know which one. I'd really like to do at least one full cycle of drama, so more than likely it'll be one of the 2 Sophocles plays. Then on the 12th of October, the exam over Greek drama will be distributed, and then it'll be due the Thursday after fall break. And we'll discuss that day, maybe. Plato's Allegory of the Cave, that's only like 2 or 3 pages in your book. And the Apology of Socrates, which is a bit longer, about 20, I believe. And then the next day, Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics and Poetics. Really ought to be doing the Poetics along with drama, because Poetics is about drama. It's not about poetry. It's about tragedy. Okay? But it's too hard to arrange that material to all work that way. And then Ovid from the Metamorphoses, and then we'll have the exam over that. And then starting beginning of November, 10 days? Approximately 10 days for Dante. for all of the Divine Comedy. The Divine Comedy is 100 cantos long. It's essentially 33 in each of them, and then there's one prologue kind of canto, I believe, in the Inferno. I might be misremembering that. So we're essentially dividing it into thirds. And notice December 5th is kind of a catch-up / review day. And I may hand out the final then. That'll just be over Dante. Or we may do the Dante exam in class, in which case it would probably be a more objective type exam. Okay? November 21st is a deadline for your paper topic approval. I want you to either email me, speak to me after class, speak to me before class, slip me a piece of paper telling me what you intend to write your paper on. And notice that is, 9 days before your paper is due. Okay? You've got to get my approval on your paper. I'm doing this and I'm giving you plenty of lead time for the paper due, because I'm tired of having students email me the night before the paper is due and saying, "Oh, Dr. Sherman, I'm going to do my paper on such and such." And they're using that exact verb tense. I am going to do the night before. Don't do that. And that's from personal experience. Okay, you're not going to write something well if it's done the night before it's due. Okay, your paper does not have to be that long. 2,400 to 3,000 words. That's roughly 8 to 10 pages. Okay, plus or minus 300 words. So I make it roughly 7 to 11 pages, excluding the works cited page. Okay. You got information there about what it should look like, how it should be formatted, all that kind of stuff. On the last page of the syllabus, you have an example of what the first page should look like in terms of the identification information, title and such. Let me go back to the guidelines for a moment to give you an example of how I grade papers. Now, I've not included in your syllabus a set number of quotations or sources you have to include in your paper. That is, I've not told you, whatever you write about, you've got to have 5 quotations from your primary text and you've got to have 5 secondary texts. You're all English majors, I think. 1 or 2 of you might be English minors. You should have an idea of how many sources you need to make your point. Okay? That's the reason you have sources, secondary sources in particular, to help justify your argument or to argue against. Okay? The reason you use primary sources, that is, say you're writing about hospitality in Homer, you want to have quotations from Homer to support your argument, to support your point. Okay? So when I get your papers, what I will do is I'll stack them all up, probably alphabetize them. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see if your paper has a title. If your paper doesn't have a title, I give it one, F, and I put it aside and I don't read it. That's why I say failure to include a title for your paper and all this other stuff will result in an automatic F. I won't read it. It might be the best thing a student ever wrote, but I won't know that. Okay? Why do you need to include a title? What do titles do? They're a roadmap. They tell your reader where you're going. Just imagine if this was blank. It's just a big old massive book, but it doesn't tell you anything about what's in the book. Okay? Assuming you were interested in buying a book, how likely are you to buy that book without a title? You're not going to. How likely are you going to go someplace without having directions on how to get there? You're not going to. Similarly, I want directions on what it is I'm about to read. And I will probably say the day the paper is due, make sure your paper has a title, because if you forgot, you can write one in. I've literally had students put, "This is the title to my paper." Handwritten. It's a title. It's a bad one. I'll put something snarky like, this is very ambiguous. What do you mean? But I do that. Then I'll turn to the works cited page. If you don't have a works cited page, you get an F. Because you're telling me I've not cited anybody. So if you've not cited anybody or anything, what is your paper? It's pure opinion. Pure opinion. I don't want pure opinion. I want something to support some pure opinion. That is, you need to quote from whatever it is you're writing about. Okay? Drama, poetry, doesn't matter. There's a paragraph there about what kind of papers will receive what kind of grades. There is a couple of paragraphs about paraphrases and such, and including indicating where paraphrases begin with some kind of tag, as so-and-so suggests, then you paraphrase, then you have your parenthetical citation. Okay? We'll probably try to spend, even though I don't have it built into the syllabus, we'll probably try to spend a little bit of a couple of class periods talking a little bit about writing. Something I'm going to do in, I think, all of my classes this semester. Okay, are there any questions so far at this point? All right. On the first page, I mentioned something about classroom decorum. So I want to talk a little bit about that and about what you can expect a little bit out of this class. How many of you are English majors? Show of hands. Okay, so the rest of you are English minors, I'm assuming? Okay. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions or raise a couple of issues because this has become pretty significant on college campuses over the last 2 to 3 years. And I kind of want to gauge your feelings and give you where I'm coming from a little bit. Why in the world are you taking a course in Western European literature or European literature to 1400? In other words, why are you reading something by Homer, who's been dead since roughly 800 BC? What's another way of phrasing that question? Why is this relevant? What do you mean by relevant?
Why does it matter to your education?
Okay, I like how you're putting that. Why does it matter to your education? Because you didn't say, why does it matter to me? Okay? The reason I'm getting at this is one of my colleagues shared it's like an op-ed done in the Chronicle of Higher Education, I don't know, a few weeks ago. Some professor somewhere, was rethinking all of his classes in order to make the material relevant to his students. Okay? And one of my colleagues replied to that email post and said essentially, well, I don't give a damn whether it's relevant or not to them. And he said this because he went on to say, it's not about them. That is, what you're learning in here specifically, and let me emphasize that, in here, in this classroom specifically, more so I would literally lay a bet on this than in any other classroom in the English department. It's not about you. It's all about what it is we will be reading. Now, what do I mean by that? Why do we read Homer today? Why do we read, how many of you have read Oedipus the King before? Or Oedipus Rex? A few of you? Okay. Why do we read Oedipus? How many of you read Antigone? Anybody? A few of you. Okay. Why do we read Antigone today? All of you who raised your hands were women. Why? Well, Antigone is a woman. What's the problem Antigone has? Because it's not peculiar to women. What issue does she confront? What is Socrates? What is Sophocles? What issue is he raising in that play? Because this applies to every person in this room today. You have Antigone, right? And you have Creon, the king, her uncle. And in that play, if you remember it, what does Antigone do that bothers her uncle? Anybody remember?
Oh, is that the one where she buries her mother?
She buries the corpse of her brother against the edict of the king. Her brother had attacked thieves. Therefore, he was an enemy of the state. He was a traitor. And Creon said, Polynices will not be buried. He will be eaten by the birds and the dogs. And she says, like hell. And so she buries him. So what conflict do we have immediately? It's not Antigone and Creon. It's the individual versus what? The state. That is an issue every person in this room has. You might be somewhat immune to it or unaware that you face it, but you face it every time you come to MTSU. Because unless you live on campus, or unless you live on an apartment near campus, you probably get in a car. And what happens as soon as you turn on your car key? You're bound by rules and laws of the state that say, in this case, small s state, that say how fast you can drive, where you can drive, where you can park, etc. Now, is the car made in such a way that you can only follow the laws? No. You can get on Old Fort Parkway and you can do 95 miles an hour if you want. Okay? Speed limit's not 95 miles an hour. And what will the police do if they catch you doing 95 miles an hour? Probably going to arrest you. You're not just going to get a ticket for that. Okay? So what have you decided? You've decided you're going to take your chances against the state. Now, that's kind of a silly, benign issue, right? But what if it's something a little more important? What if it's something where the state says you have to do something that you think is morally wrong? Is the law necessarily moral? No, it's not. 40 miles an hour on Veterans Parkway is not an issue of morality. Veterans Parkway, I drive on it fairly regularly, is a road that is not meant to be driven 40 miles an hour on. The road begs you to drive faster. You get in your car and it's almost saying 50, 55. Okay? But what about Texas? What about if the government were to say, we're going to reinstitute a draft? And guess what? Because we're all about equality, everybody has to register for it, and everybody can be drafted. Everybody of a certain age and physical ability. Obviously, you wouldn't want an 85-year-old, quadriplegic, being drafted. But what if you morally had issues with the draft or going to war? That then becomes kind of an issue. Or if you had morally with issues of what taxes are used to pay for. Okay? What if MTSU instituted some rules that you disagreed with? Well, I take that back. I'm sure they have rules that you disagree with. There's a lot of rules that I disagree with. I'm pretty much a pretty far, how do I put this, right-wing libertarian. In other words, just leave me alone. Stay out of my business. Similarly, stay out of your business, in your business, in your business, in your business. Here's an example. A couple of years ago, MTSU passed the no tobacco campus, tobacco-free campus. Why? Because tobacco is bad for you. So we're going to play in loco parentis. We're going to be your parents. We're going to tell you you cannot smoke or chew or, vape. There's no tobacco in electronic cigarettes. Literally, there is no tobacco in electronic cigarettes, but you can't use them on campus. I don't smoke. I smoke pipes and cigars, but never on campus. Okay, so if we're going to do that, why did they do that? What was the issue behind it? Nope. We did it before the state government. It's a public health issue. It's a public health issue. Secondhand smoke kills people. And third-hand, all that kind of stuff. And believe me, I used to hate it when I'd come up to Peck Hall, cold winter days, and students would be outside sucking on cancer sticks right outside the AC intake vents, because it just blows through the whole building, right? What else is a public health issue today? What is the number one public health issue in the United States? Anybody know? Obesity. What is a major cause of obesity? Nobody has one that I see. Soft drinks. One can of Coke has the equivalent of 14 teaspoons of sugar. Think about how much sugar that is. I drink Coke, so. Okay? Why ban cigarettes and alcohol, but not ban this other stuff? Can't get secondhand obesity. That's a good way of putting it. What else?
It's also just not seen as generally wrong by the public. You're not going to get as many complaints.
True. Why else? Those are both perfectly valid reasons. I'm not saying I'm looking for another one, but there is another one.
More money
MTSU has a contract with Coca-Cola to sell Coca-Cola products. When I started here, we sold both Coke and Pepsi products. And then Aramark got a contract just with Coke. And everything Pepsi was literally removed overnight. Okay? But it's still a public health issue because it's also a huge cause of heart disease, lung disease, okay, and a variety of other issues. So what if your particular sacred cow suddenly got banned, whatever it is, by MTSU? Then you're in Antigone's place. Okay. And MTSU is in Crayon's place. So do you just roll with what happens? Or do you fight? Do you stand up against it? Okay. This is an example of how something written 2,500 years ago, Antigone was written in the 5th century BC, is relevant, but not relevant in the sense of, what does it mean to me personally? It's relevant to everybody. Homer. You're gonna see in reading Homer, Homer's writing about, let's use the term that's used, a bunch of dead white males. So what if you're not dead, you're not white, you're not male? What does it mean for you? Well, what's he saying about this culture? That is, what are some of the themes and issues that arise? You're going to see this is a big one. Hospitality. Heroism. Sacrifice. Obedience to the gods. Okay? This is related to the first one. human relationships. Okay? Almost all of these apply to everything we are reading. Okay? So, kind of more largely construed or more broadly figured, why do we read this stuff?
Influence.
Okay, it's influence. Students at, let's see, where was this? Yale, English majors at Yale petitioned last spring the Yale English department to remove from the required courses all these classes by dead white males. They didn't want to be required to read Shakespeare. They didn't want to be required to read William Blake or William Wordsworth or Samuel Johnson. They wanted to read more 20th and 21st century material by writers of color, for example. So let's drop Shakespeare, let's drop Spencer, let's drop Chaucer, let's drop Milton. And this is literally what they argued. And the chair agreed. The chair said, oh, by all means, if this is what you want, then this is what you'll have. It's the smorgasbord approach to education. Okay? What are all of these kind of getting at? English is a branch of what's called the humanities, like philosophy, music, history, art. Okay, so what are the humanities? They're about the human condition. The humanities are the things that flow from humans. Okay? Specific humans? Does Antigone the play, I'll underline it to indicate that's the play, is that pertinent only for 5th century BC Greek women who are the sister/daughter of her father? No.
I was going to say, we speak a different language, but since that time period, human nature hasn't really changed that much.
They're about human nature, the human condition. What does that phrase suggest? It applies to all of us. Okay? It applies to all of us. Does that mean the experience of a white male in 21st century America is the same as the experience of a black female in 21st century America? No. What does it mean, however? We have something in common, right? What's that thing in common?
People.
Humanity. Okay? Or Asian American or Mexican, or it doesn't matter. What these are getting at is that ultimately we all belong to this. Okay? And we all have some of these same ideas, but we all experience the same emotions, love, hate, and everything in between. Right? We all have to learn to do what? Be in relationship with other humans. Okay? We all, whether we are religious or irreligious, we all got to deal somehow with this. It might not be obedience to the gods. It might be relationship with the gods. The divine, so to speak. There's a famous saying, there are no atheists in foxholes. That is, when the mortars are incoming, everybody starts to believe something. Okay? Well, earliest writers up to today have said there's more than just what appears to our eyes. So you have to deal with that in some sense. What is hospitality really? It's not an industry per se. It's about how people do what?
Treat one another.
Treat one another. In other words, you could say all of this comes down to ethics. Ethics is the branch of philosophy that is about how humans interact with other humans. You know, it's the Greeks that came up with the idea of the polis, not police, polis, like Indianapolis, which means city. Okay, and how individual do what? Relate together in a common group. Okay? What do we, what's the motto of the United States? It's not in God we trust. E pluribus unum. What does that mean? Out of many, one. Al Gore famously put it backwards one time. He said, out of the one, many. What's been happening over the last, 5-10 years, or you could even say 5-10 months? Some of you would say, it's all Trump's fault. Goes back to his election. The country is just totally fragmented. No, it was fragmented before. Okay? Out of the many, one. What does that mean? 13 states became one country, or 13 colonies became one country. Now we have 50 states, one country. What about the European Union? You got a bunch of states there. Is it a union? No, it really isn't. They think they are. They try to be. They haven't yet figured it out. Okay? This is one of the issues writers back here were wrestling with. What is my relationship to the person next to me? What is my responsibility and obligation to that person? And what is their responsibility and obligation to me? You're going to see as Odysseus begins his journey, he's going to meet some people who welcome him with open arms. He's going to meet some people who, essentially. Okay? So one of the issues Homer is kind of wrestling with is, how do I deal with, what's one of the common buzzwords in departments of English? Depends on how many English courses you've taken. The other, the non-me. Okay? Well, how does the other respond to me? It's not just how do I respond to the other. Okay? So these are all issues. So what does that mean is open for discussion in this class. Okay? Well, all of these as they relate to what we're reading, but then also as to how they relate to us today. So, for example, here's a word I'm going to lay down a law here. I don't really want to hear used as an example. Here I'm going to put two words. And I'll tell you why. Xenophobic, homophobic. What does the second half of each of those words mean?
Right.
Fear, right. Isn't it agoraphobia is the fear of open spaces or something like that? Arachnophobia is fear of spiders. Okay. That's a good example. Arachnophobic, fear of spiders. Like what would you think if right now, suddenly from the ceiling, your face is telling me, don't do that. A bunch of spiders started falling. Probably everybody get up and run. Okay? That means what? Fear. You were literally afraid. What does xenophobic mean?
Fear of the other.
The others. Fear of others. Where is it used in political discourse today? Or in public discourse? Fear of, the xeno, the others. Fear of immigrants. Fear of aliens. Okay, is it really fear? I mean, whatever your political stripes, do you really think there are people who fear somebody coming over the southern, northern, whatever border I mean, fear, like they're literally afraid for their lives. Well, I take that back. There might be some people on the Texas border or the Arizona border where they've, found bodies literally on their land and such. But somebody in D.C. or Chicago or Autumnal, Iowa, no. They might not like illegal immigration. That is, people coming illegally into the country. Doesn't mean they fear them. Similarly, homophobic. Fear of man is literally what it means. But it's not what it means in discourse today. Today it means fear of gays or lesbians or trans, etc. Does it mean that somebody who disagrees with homosexuality literally, if they found out the person sitting next to them was gay or lesbian, that could go ah! And run because they're afraid like it's catching? No. Now there might be moral reasons for disagreeing, there might be intellectual reasons for disagreeing, but what is it? It's disagreement. It's not fear. So the reason I said, here are two words I'm going to kind of ban. Why am I going to ban them? One, they're not accurate. And two, how are they used and why are they used? In either political discourse, college discourse today, they're used only for one reason. The same reason for which a lot of people say Trump is a genius. Branding. He made a brand out of his name, right? He's a consummate showman. Okay? These are branding terms, but think of branding in the other sense. Hot iron, branded onto something. In other words, so what are they used for? They're used so that I don't have to talk with somebody who holds the ideas that get branded xenophobic or homophobic. I can just label them and do what? Labels are nice. Because once you label something or somebody or categorize them, you can then do what?
Accept that you know everything about them.
Except that you know everything about them and disregard them. Because they're not me. They disagree with me. And my rules kind of are what goes. Okay? Or the rules of my political class or my political group or my ethnic group or my religious group or my, you kind of get where that goes? How many of you have read Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451? Oh, only a few of you, okay. Well, one of the extra credit things I'm going to give as an option is to read Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 and apply it to what's been going on in the United States in, say, like the last 5 years. Because there's this big, long passage in the middle of the novel that Bradbury wrote in 1950, folks. Okay? 67 years ago. Where he describes how censorship in the world of the novel began. See, everybody thinks censorship begins at the top, that the government says thou shalt not. Bradbury foresaw, prophesied if you want, censorship almost always begins where? From below. It rises up. It begins with people saying, I teach a course on Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings. I teach a course in London just on Harry Potter. Doing it next summer. When the Harry Potter novels became famous, not after the first one or the second was published, or really even the third, but when the fourth one came out, what happened in the United States? What did a lot of right-wing Christians suggest? Mad about witchcraft, book burning, condemning J.K. Rowling to hell because, Satan is trying to lead children astray into Satanism and paganism and Wicca and all this other nonsense. Okay? So, notice that didn't begin from state legislatures saying you can't do this. It didn't begin with high school principals or elementary school principals saying you can't have this book. It began from the bottom and bubbled up. It began with parents saying, I don't want my child to read this book, therefore your child can't read it either. Well, the same kind of thing happens on college campuses. Columbia University, one of our premier universities in the country, okay, a couple of years ago, students didn't want to take, they were okay with taking the required course in Western civilization, 2-semester course where they read classics kind of the Western world, kind of what you're doing in one semester. They also do the second, but it's required there. And it's not just required of English majors. Everybody takes this 2-semester core curriculum, okay? And they're like, why should we have to read this stuff? Why, for example, as is on our syllabus, why do I have to read Ovid's Metamorphoses? I mean, there's rape there. It triggers me. So, because it triggers you, you shouldn't have to deal with the issue? Well, what gets left? I mean, that's one of the things Bradbury kind of raises. When you take out everything that is offensive, what are you left with? What are you left to read? The telephone book. I mean, every single thing we're going to read in here this semester can be offensive to somebody. Anybody in here Catholic? No, okay, good. The no Catholic is going to be upset by the portrayal of the Catholic Church by Dante Alighieri, a member of the Catholic Church, who puts a bunch of Catholic popes, not in paradise, but in hell, based on their behavior. Okay? Well, that's offensive to me. Get rid of it. I mean, a new edition came out, I believe this was, came out of Huckleberry Finn. How many of you have read Huckleberry Finn? What bad word is used regularly, or am I confusing with Tom Sawyer? No, it's Huck Finn. With Huck Finn. Nigger Jim. I can't believe Dr. Sherman said that word, and it's going to be on YouTube. I'm going to go. So, editors replaced the word nigger. Doing what in the process? Applying a 21st century mentality to something that was written when? 1800s. Right? So changing it to do what? What's the purpose of removing that word?
It's making them seem like people were never racist by removing it from the history books. It's just not true.
Okay. It's a form of whitewashing. What do you do when you whitewash something? Literally. You paint it, right? Okay. Christ in the Gospels talks about the scribes and Pharisees being whitewashed sepulchres. What's a sepulcher? It's a grave. It's a tomb. So why are they whitewashed? To make them pretty. Because what's inside? Dead and rotten and foul and smelly. So if you whitewash Huckleberry Finn that way, what are you attempting to do? You're attempting to make it more palatable. Well, I got to remove this word because it offends people. What about the character himself? Okay, now we'll remove him too. So, do we rewrite all literature? 18th century, people had access to editions of Shakespeare that are radically different from some of the plays of Shakespeare we know today. For example, King Lear. And this was done by a guy whose last name was Baudelaire. And from his name we get to Baudelarize, which means to clean up, to change, to alter. He took King Lear, and because he didn't like the fact that Lear and Cordelia die at the end of the play. Sorry to give that away if you've ever seen the play or read it. Shakespeare, he changed it. So Cordelia doesn't die, and Lear doesn't die, and it's a happy ending. King Lear isn't a comedy. It's not supposed to have a happy ending. It's a tragedy. Most everybody's supposed to die at the end. Okay? So what are you doing when you change something like that? You're saying, la 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 la, this isn't the way life is supposed to be. This is the way life is supposed to be. And then what happens when people come back to, quote unquote, the real world? You know, colleges are today, university presidents are saying, colleges, some university presidents are saying, colleges should be a what for students? Right here? Safe zone, safe space. Colleges should be a safe space. What does that mean? You shouldn't be intimidated. Does it mean you should be free from violence? Well, I mean, yeah, it does, but really? Only colleges? What about restaurants, bars, the street? So that mean, you know, if you want to be safe from violence, run to the college. No. Free from rape? Yes. Where else should be free from rape?
Everywhere.
Thank you. Everywhere. Okay. Safe space means safe. What do you mean by intimidation?
It's kind of turned into that. Being offended.
You shouldn't be offended. You shouldn't be offended. Okay? That is utter nonsense. If there's one place in America where you... Should I touch this? No. Where you should be offended, it's here. This is the one place. You shouldn't be offended in court. You shouldn't be offended at the restaurant or at the grocery store. But here you should. And I don't mean where somebody should just come up in your face, you know, and blast you. But I mean where you should have your ideas challenged. The university is the one place that used to be what's called the free marketplace of ideas, where everything can be discussed, where nothing is out of bounds. What does that mean? Everything and nothing. That is, I'm not casting this on, I'm going to use Andrew for it, because I know him. Let's say Andrew he's not, okay, so don't get me wrong here. Let's say Andrew's a white supremacist. I mean, dyed in the wool. He's got the card even that says white supremacists of America, you know, number and everything. The university is the one place where he ought to be able to spout white supremacist ideology. Why?
Someone can tell him he's being stupid.
Hopefully, with a little bit better reasons than that. But yeah.
So there can be a dialogue.
So there can, a what?
A dialogue.
A dialogue. What does that word mean? What does the dia in dialogue mean? Two parts. It's not a monologue. What has happened over about the last 5 years is that universities have become places of monologues only. Only one side gets to talk. I mean, look at what happened. And again, I don't care what your politics are. Look what happened at UC Berkeley last year. You invite somebody from the right, whether they're far right or even mildly right. And what has happened? The person's been banned or shut down. How? Either by the administration or by what's called the heckler's veto. Why is it so interesting that this happened in Berkeley? Any of you know Berkeley's history? 1964, the free speech movement began on the steps of Sproul Hall in Berkeley, with college students standing up to the administration and saying, we have a right to voice our opinions, and our opinions are against the Vietnam War. And the governor, sent in the National Guard. And now it's UC Berkeley that is saying not everybody has the right to their opinion. And we don't have to give speakers the ability to speak their opinion. We will give these people a place to speak their opinion, but we won't give these people. Why? Because there are now on college campuses ideas that cannot be discussed. And yes, white supremacy does have ideas. I would say they're wrong ideas. They're based on bad sociology, bad anthropology, bad religion, and some of them just downright sheer stupidity and prejudice. Prejudice is a non-rationally held idea based upon a stereotype. Okay? But it's only through that kind of dialogue that someone can proverbially, not saying they will, see the light. Because what happens all too often with any kind of prejudice, you can present rational, logical reasons that show the prejudice is wrong, and how will it be received? It won't. But this is the one place where it should be. Similarly, you can have somebody complete other side of the spectrum. You know, so I would say you ought to be able to have, and this would be really cool, frankly, David Duke, Louis Farrakhan. Have them debate. That would be cool. No, I don't know if it would be so cool. Because they talk over each other. Because they're not good examples necessarily for each other. Get Cory Booker, senator from Delaware? Yeah, I think Delaware. And, I don't know, Jeff Sessions. Nah, that wouldn't be good because they were colleagues. Somebody else, you know, from the right. And let them argue their perspective. But somebody right and left, or somebody conservative and progressive, you know, that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that ought to happen. That's part and parcel of the humanities. It's when you shut out that kind of dialogue, when you don't allow this. Because there are colleges that have literally banned this kind of stuff from being taught. Not to where, oh, well, you can teach it, or you can take a class in it. It's to where, no, you can't. To where you can't take a class just in Western literature to 1400. The reason I use this book, and not the Norton Anthology of World Literature, is because the Norton Anthology of Western Literature. The Norton Anthology of Western Literature has a big, long section of, and it's not that I have anything against this individually, of Islamic writers. They're not in the West. The Middle East is not in the West. I would say, strictly speaking, Gilgamesh probably shouldn't be in here. Okay? But Gilgamesh is often taken to be the beginning of the Western literary tradition because it helps inform a lot of these ideas, okay, which are foreign to a lot of Islamic writing. But the Norton editors did that because they wanted to be, what's the buzzword? Inclusive. We're going to include it. I've seen textbooks of Western literature that include writers from the quote-unquote, you're not supposed to use this word today because it's insensitive, the Orient. Why aren't you supposed to use the word the Orient? Okay. That's where the rug comes from. The Orient refers to, the word means, the East. In other words, it's a biased term, because what does it suppose? It supposes England is the determiner of direction. And the Orient is what's east of England. That's why the Middle East is the Middle East. And Asia is the Far East, because what is the here? Greenwich, London. We're in the West, or in the Western Hemisphere. England isn't in the Western Hemisphere. It's, you know, at the time all this literature kind of arose. See, it's the standard, so to speak. All right. So we're gonna talk about a lot of ideas. Some of them might be uncomfortable. Okay. If you don't want to be uncomfortable, don't take this class. If you don't want to be challenged, don't take this class. If you don't want to be offended, don't take this class. There won't be any microaggressions. I mean, there'll be macro. I mean, there'll be big, large, I'll jump all over one thing or another. Okay? We will bring politics into it because almost all of this stuff does have ramifications. Think of a rock dropping into a still pond. What happens? Ripples. Okay? The ripples from what is being discussed in this literature beginning 2,500 years ago are still going on. Why? Same red blood, same human soul, same human psyche. Yeah, it differs from culture to culture, okay? But we're all human, and so we're all affected, part and parcel at least, by the same things. And we all experience the same things. What is the number one, I'll stop with this, the number one fear of humanity? All of us. Death. Death. It's the one thing we all face. We don't all face death and taxes. You can live in a country, you can live in a culture that doesn't have taxes. We all die. Okay? So everybody writes to some extent about death. I mean, Odysseus is confronting death fairly regularly on his journeys. Whether the death is being caused by the gods, Poseidon and his son Polyphemus, okay, or Circe the witch, or others. That's why Dante goes through hell, purgatory, heaven. It's a metaphor. All right? All right, so we will start Homer on Thursday. Like I said, expect a quiz, major characters, major events of the first 6 books. It'll probably be, as I said, a dry run, just to give you an idea of the kinds of things I look for on quizzes. If you came in late, come see me so I know who you are. Oh, and by the way, I record everything and put it up on my YouTube channel, so if you miss class, you can watch it on there. I've had students tell me before if they had a long commute, they convert it to MP3 and listen to it. Personally, I think that's not a good idea because you might fall asleep. But do with it as you will. All right. See you on Tuesday.
So I just have to let you know, I have an allergy to something unknown where I go into a shop. So
Oh.
I've been looking at it
Okay.
times, just so you know. And then I was just recently diagnosed with lupus as well.
Oh, I got a good friend who has lupus.
Yeah, so figuring that out, it's going to be a fun journey. But
Yeah.
good to have an answer.
So you had to take my Harry Potter class. I mean, at least you tie in with Lupin.
Right? I just actually got the Latin version that they did and have been translating that, so it's been fun.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yep. Hello.
First off, sorry I'm late.
Oh, were you?
Andrea Covington.
Covington, right there.
Also, I'm not sure if they said that, but nope, they said that tomorrow. I'm a volleyball player,
Okay.
and we actually will not be here on Thursday.
This Thursday? Okay.
Yes, we
Yeah,
will
I haven't
be.
received anything yet.
I think they're actually going to send it our schedule and
Let me
things.
see. Thursday's the 1st? No, Thursday's the 31st.
Yes.
So I'm going to make a note to have that excused. Even though I don't do. Okay.
They should be sending the schedule out tomorrow.
Do you know about how many games you'll have or miss?
I'm not sure just yet.
Okay.
I believe we're supposed to get our schedule, like our actual calendar of things for
Okay.
this month
Okay.
today.
Okay.
But I know for sure that they our athletic director is supposed to be sending
Right.
something.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
No problem. I'm sorry I was late.
Oh, were you? Or are you Delaney?
Victoria Tilson.
Last name again?
Tilson for the team.
Oh, different page. Yep, there you are. All right.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Yeah.